Hello, hello, my fierce ones. I am popping on today. It was just a little talk. I know I say that, but I feel like it's a little talk about why we can't ever really sell ourselves. And believe me, I know what all the feels tell us when we're in that situation, when we're getting ready to go and call somebody, or we're getting ready for, doing a sales pitch, or, that moment before you press the live button going like, is this really what I'm going to do? I know it feels different than what I'm saying. And we're going to talk a little bit into that today because, this is part of my whole messaging. This is what makes us fierce, understanding what the feels are and what the feels are actually trying to tell us so that we know how to get back to center, so that we can choose at any given moment to choose something better, a little bit more powerful for ourselves, and to be able to choose growth instead of, relying on our old fear patterns that are, they're keeping us in our comfort zone and maybe even, below our comfort zone, maybe even in a place where we are, really acting out of fear. Hi, Jenna, how are you today? And that fear isn't even your comfort zone. That fear is, almost coming from a sense of depletion or a sense of being shrunken down to perhaps even bare bones. Because that our bare bones aren't really who we are in that sense. We are more than just this body, more than just our daily lives, more than just our survival. Okay, so why you can't really sell yourself? Feel free to agree or disagree with me on this because I know this is one of those things that I really had to do a lot of feeling into and shifting around. So if you aren't at the place where you can say, I think I know what you mean, don't worry and just maybe kind of feel into what I'm saying a little bit. But because we are these whole beings, we are body, we are mind, we are emotions, and we're of course soul. We are also energy, right? And we are never less than any of that. We are never outside of that wholeness. Let that sink in a minute here. We are never outside our wholeness. We are never outside of creation. We are never outside of the divine. We are never outside or lost in a sense, the universe. All of these things are whole and complete unto themselves, and so are you. Even if you don't feel like it. Even if you're getting caught up in, what I'm calling today business martyrdom, where you're caught in these perpetual patterns of giving, and so you always feel depleted. Depletion doesn't mean you're not whole. It just means you're running your energy in a way that's not healthy. Two different things. So we are whole and complete unto ourselves. This is how we're born. This is how we come into this world. And, a lot of what culture teaches us and a lot of what society teaches us, our families even, is certainly not based in our wholeness. I almost ended the live by accident. And when you're coming at doing something like self-promotion, we kind of fall into these traps where we feel a feeling and then perhaps, and we form a belief around that. Like, what is that? What is that weird feeling? And that is what ego does, right? That is like almost the sole purpose of ego, to figure that shit out. Figure out what felt bad. What kind of potential harm could we be in, right? That's what it does. But then a lot of times we will also find other people. We will get online with these same patterns, with these same feels, and we're curious. We're naturally curious beings, and we'll be like, "What is that shit? Why does that keep happening to me?" And they'll tell us their story and we'll either agree or we'll disagree with it. But when we find enough evidence that's actually is something and then it means something, we begin to form even more beliefs around it. We believe it begins to be like this whole pattern with now a name and a structure and a definite this is it and this is not it kind of belief around what all those feels actually mean. But let's face it, we don't come from a society or even a world where we are really good with our emotions. So much emotional suppression is taught. Very innocently in a lot of circumstances. Parents don't necessarily mean to push our feelings down or to tell us our feelings are invalid. They don't necessarily mean it in that sense where they actually want to harm us. At least I believe most of the time. They're acting out of their own beliefs about what emotions are. But when we're talking about emotions, it's like, this thing where emotions are part of our wholeness. And there isn't a place where we can be without it. There is no place where we can get on a call with a client and not experience some kind of emotion. But we tend to polarize what some of these emotions are. I felt weird about that. I'm pretty sure they noticed. That was a bad experience. So when we have a bunch of these bad experiences, then it becomes an emotional feedback loop. I always feel weird when I get on discovery calls. I always get really nervous and feel like I shouldn't put myself out there right before I hit the live button. So those negative feedback loops, they're not going to do anything but make you feel more drained and get you back into those unhealthier patterns where we aren't growing, where we aren't living from our wholeness, because that wholeness is there. What we believe about it and what we believe about who we are and how we can get there and even our potential to get there is really what keeps us from experiencing that wholeness a lot of the time. I won't say all the time because, sometimes we have to focus in on something. Sometimes we have to use that limitation that this world gives us to our advantage. For today, I'm in one of my coaching calls with one of my mentors, and my daughter's texting me about the state testing she did yesterday, and she doesn't think she did all of it because her friend didn't do all of it, and she has to show up for that. And why, how come you didn't know? Like, there were 2 days of testing. I'm like, there weren't 2 days of testing. And I went back and I looked in all of the documentation. I'm like, nobody said anything about 2 days of testing. Yesterday was algebra. Today is biology. Just because something is true for them doesn't mean it's true for you. And it doesn't mean you have to freak out about it. Nothing ever means you have to freak out about it. But the negative feedback loop really begins to throw you for a loop. And the more you feed that beast, believing it means something, believing it means something awful about you, or, how did you miss that boat? What email didn't you get today? The more you're going to keep yourself in doubt, and the more you're going to keep yourself guessing. So you want to find a point where all of this, deeper emotional work is going to start working in the favor, so that you can begin even dismantling some of those feedback patterns, recognizing it for what it is, and learning to, at the very least, stop feeding that beast. Because when you feed the other beast, the beast of your intuition, of your guidance, of your connection to your divine self and your own higher potential, that at least is going to grow and start balancing out the negative feedback loop stuff where we can say, maybe that weirdness wasn't about me. Maybe that weirdness is because they know they can't afford this and they suddenly felt weird about getting on a call where they were going to be asked to buy something. Because it's not about you. That is then about them. The only thing that made it about you was you believed in that moment that you said something wrong. You crossed some kind of line. There are lines. But as an empath and an intuitive, what I have learned over and over again in my life is that my lines are so constrictive. They are so closer to my own core, like they fall naturally to my own core, closer to my own core than an averagely sensing a person who will not identify as an empath will. Their boundary lines are going to be out a little further because they don't necessarily have all the connection issues. They don't read as deeply into everything. They're not looking for the subtle hints and tips or in the hints and clues about somebody's emotional state. They're going to tend to take people a little bit more at face value. And perhaps you're going to be a little bit more skeptical about the true nature of somebody, but pros and cons of identifying as empath versus not identifying as empath there. So the signals are what we have to get a lot more clear on. And all emotions are signals. All emotions are signals. Some feel good, some feel bad, some feel neutral, some feel somewhere in between all of those things. But they all mean something. So this shift really isn't about believing, or isn't about just shifting your ideas about self-promotion. This is going to go a little bit deeper, and it's going to really have us look at how we're even looking at our fields. Now, it certainly does mean something that you do not feel confident, or that you feel like you have to be quiet in order to keep the peace, or perhaps that you get confused easily. You get a little overwhelmed with all the details that you have to learn into and lean into when you are building your signature sales and your signature programs and all that. All that stuff has to come from you. And a lot of the stuff that's offered out there in the business world isn't meant for an empath or an intuitive, not really. And will have you believe that it can be a lot more cookie cutter than it needs to be. But all anybody can ever really do in the business world is, just show you a blueprint. And you're going to have to build it yourself. And you're going to have to build it out of your love, your energy, your guidance, and your ideas, and your own sense of connection. We talked a lot about feeding the beast. So what can some of those feels around self-promotion actually mean about getting back into center? We're going to start, I want to start talking about this in the pop-up series that I'm doing starting on Monday. We're going to have 3 days of video, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and 2 days in between, Tuesday and Thursday. I really want to help you feel into where you are with this. What are the thoughts and the feels that keep coming up around all the instances you have where you are trying to self-promote and then perhaps abort, or come at it from a place where you aren't in your confidence, where a trigger is just like, oh, I'm not sure, that probably really sucked. Maybe I should never do that again. I want to hear where you are in that, and I want you to hear that too. So some of the things that I know I had to learn to shift and learn to hear the neutral messaging behind, because I was getting so triggered into ego, I wasn't able to hear the neutral to the positive side of it. So the first one is you aren't in your place of power. Like, you know, you are crossing your own line with trying to offer something to somebody. You don't feel in your confidence. You don't feel that that's your zone of genius. You don't feel like you can even help that one person in particular. You're in that kind of self-doubt. But I will say, if that is what you're feeling, you should really stop and check where your sense of responsibility is around your ideas of healing. And I'm not saying this, I'm not going to say this next part because I want to tell you that healers don't exist or anything like that. Of course they do. Of course we do heal. But I think a lot of times we take over responsibility for our clients, for the people we read for the people that, we just want to help get through their day. And we take their results and we put it on us. And we think that we also then have to heal that person completely. But that is almost never true. In the course of our life, we're going to have so many teachers, so many people that are going to help heal us and heal various layers of us. And the only responsibility in the moment to any given person is to really just help them where they are within your own integrity. There really isn't ever any good reason to step out of your own integrity in order to serve somebody. So we can't let our ego jump into the future and say, like, well, I don't know where they're going to be 3 weeks from now. I don't know where I'm going to be 3 weeks from now. I don't know if I'm really going to be able to help them. I don't know if I'm going to have the time. And you have to remember that when you prioritize the connection and just make this about you and them, and bringing you both back into integrity, both back to a place where there's flow, because that flow is healing in and of itself, maybe you are doing the best thing you can do for them in that moment. All right, another thing that I had to shift around was feeling overwhelmed by learning something new. And I didn't recognize that for what it was for a very, very long time. And that, I think it was really perhaps my biggest shift to this day, was even recognizing how much pressure I was putting on myself or learning how to market for a discovery call, market for a care call, market for getting people on my team, and learning to do that from my own integrity and learning to do that in a way that perhaps, the drug marketing company needed me to do it in, because, they have liability issues. They have a certain way they have to have people do things. When I had really focused on my own business, it was really understanding that I couldn't just take somebody else's strategy and, consider it a plug and play. I couldn't take somebody else's conversation bits and craft a whole conversation out of that. I had to be able to speak about my business from a place that was wholly me. But that learning curve is huge. And if it doesn't feel authentic yet, it's simply because you're focusing a little bit more on the blueprint stuff than your own energy and how you're using that energy and your intention to create connection to fill in the blueprint. Okay, so another self-promotion shift up I had to do was I felt like I didn't know what to say. And it was very obvious from the way I was doing things that even when I did get people coming to me, at that point, a couple of years ago, and asking more about my work, more about me, more about how to do stuff, even where they can get started, that I didn't even know how to have that conversation. And it wasn't a confidence thing. I felt like joyous in that moment. Somebody, wanted to work with me. The problem was I didn't have my messaging broke down in such a way that I could easily use my messaging and my resources and my opt-ins and my group to help me carry the conversation and further the conversation. I thought I had to do it all by myself. And then every time somebody emailed me or every time somebody wanted to get in a chat, I had to make a completely new sale out of the blue, out of whole cloth, out of everything. Because I didn't have the structure. I didn't build the structure I needed with my resources, with my group, with my... All right. Hello, Angela. How are you today? Did you get to go for a run? Today's not running weather here. Today it's very damp and icky, and I had tornado warnings yesterday, so everything is completely muddy. Though I hear mud runs are fun. And I must say, everybody looks like they're glowing after they do a mud run. So the last shift I have, just like stuff I came up with at the top of my head today when I knew I needed to talk into this a little bit more, is when you get to that point where you're ready to make the pitch, or like the conversation you're having with somebody cannot continue any further unless you make some kind of pitch, right? Because like, I can't keep talking to this person for free forever. This person either has to commit, or maybe we can find them a referral, or maybe we can just guide them back to some of the free resources and point out what perhaps they can focus on a little bit more. But you would come to this point where you keep shying away from making the pitch. You keep shying away from making the offer to go deeper. And what you're missing, the disconnect, the thing that ego is not allowing you to see in this, is your own impact. Your own impact simply by... I will call them back in a minute. Your own impact simply by spending the time to even see what kind of help they need. And you are the professional. That doesn't mean you have to be in a suit and a tie and all that all the time, but it does mean that you know how to tap your network. You have people you can talk to for whom, to whom this person might resonate better. So first of all, it's not really all up to you. And perhaps sometimes the greatest service we can offer is a referral. But it's also understanding that half the time you might be the only person that they felt comfortable enough to speak into these things, into these feels, into this pattern that they're experiencing. That you might be the only person that they've opened up to about it, or gone even just a little bit deeper into it beyond, I had a crappy day. And for somebody to hear that, and for somebody to witness that, creates impact in another person's life. And not because we solved the problem, not because we shifted the chakra, and not because, they're instantly healed. Again, there's that over responsibility in healing and in, helping others. Just giving them that space to be is a valuable business tool, especially in our field, especially because we're working with people who probably do have some sensitivities of their own, and they don't know how to give themselves that space yet. All right. So once you realize that your tools and your calls and the little one-on-one chats with people are really just giving them the space to sort it out, to even see if, your message is what they're resonating with, then like the pressure of this having to be a sales thing, I have to be on the ball and 100% every time I get on that call, it really does kind of fall away. Because you cannot help that person from not picking up the phone and calling them, from not hitting the go live button and speaking to these people about something, because this is about the connection. And you can't not have, you can't sit in a place and not have connection and then, wonder why your business isn't working. Our gifts are meant to be shared. That is our ultimate destiny. Any guidance, intuition, it's all meant to come out in this world in one way or another. And it's up to us to build a little bit of backbone, a little bit of structure, so that we can easily do it. Because it's not about us, it's about the message. It's about creating this space where people can feel into our words and our energy. All right, that's what I have to say about that. But I want to know, and I'll post a thread here in a minute. I want to know, what are the feels that you are getting when you think about self-promoting, when you think about going live, when you think about building your email list, when you think about having to post in groups about your business? What are those feels? What are they specifically? I want you to name them, okay? And I want to know, you can put it in here if you want, but I will also put a thread over in the group so you can look for that and we can talk about it. You can talk into that. We're not going to talk into it a lot right now. I just want you to start thinking about it. And we're going to talk a lot more about it though next week during the pop-up series. And once the pop-up series is over, we're kind of just going to slowly transition back more into dream casting and manifestation, and back to looking at the whole of our lives and not just our business life. And the conversation about just the business life stuff, that's going to happen in another group. And it'll come back here once or twice a year, but that's about it. All right. I love you. And I want to hear what you got to say. I want to hear what your feels are on this. All right. I hope you have a great Wednesday.